It's so nice to see so many people I know and so many new people I don't know. So my name is Emmett Shear. I have done many things, but right now I am leading an AI company that is researching alignment. I really think of ourselves as more of an alignment research company more than anything else. And as part of that, I've been thinking a lot about learning systems, of which the economy and culture and all those things are an example. I've come up with a theory as to what's going wrong in the modern world and what we can do about it. And so I'm here to share that with you. In the spirit of helping us all make uh, robust and stable progress. We're first going to do some math, which is the start of all good presentations. What is accuracy? Accuracy means there's some distribution of observations. They call it the true observational distribution all the time, although I always think it's weird since it's just the observations you got. Like, who's to say if those are the true ones or not? But you have some distribution that the universe gives you, and then you have some observation distribution you expected, and if there's a gap between them, that's a divergence. That's a lower accuracy. And if there's no gap, that's higher accuracy. So you're trying to guess the distribution you'd get. And there's this other thing called precision. Precision isn't really about how you relate to the world at all. Precision is about how you relate to yourself. Precision is, are you confident that the distribution is going to be just like this, that this is the observation I'm going to get? Or do you kind of like not know? And it's like, well, it could be this, it could be that. It's how confident you are. And sometimes you get point estimates with confidence intervals, or sometimes you get distributions, but it's all kind of the same idea that like you have some tightness of like how your guesses are. That's precision. And then they're some amount close to reality after that, which is accuracy. And here you can see that you can have high precision or low precision and the same accuracy either way. And this leads to an idea called fit. And I don't really know how many people, how deep people are into these kinds of things, but this is a really, really important idea. Fit is this idea of like, when I am trying to guess what reality is going to do next, when I'm trying to model reality, I'm trying to understand what will happen, there's three basic phases I can be in with regards to that that are distinct. And one of them is well fit. Like, I'm doing a good job. That one's kind of boring, but like obviously desirable. Like, my thing matches. But when you don't match, you can not match in two very different ways, and they have very different consequences. One way you don't match is you're underfit, which is to say, like, you're kind of blurred out, and your guess might be like generally kind of right. Like, your guess might be over time the average, but in any particular case, you're probably not very close because you're low precision. And this is a default state in some ways. When you first encounter something and you have no idea what's going on, you are always underfit. You have to go on like just your sort of whatever your uniform prior for a new situation that you don't know. And then as you learn, you become more precise, right? You start to learn better and better what you going on. And if you are good at this game, you will become well fit. You will start to predict what will actually happen. And if you keep doing it, you'll get overfit. And one of the things I don't like about showing the overfit thing is that this shows in the instance sort of the predicted distribution of being overfit versus what you get, where you're predicting all these very specific things, and some of them happen, but some of them don't. And you're overconfident about the things that you think are going to happen. But it's kind of hard to understand overfitness in the moment. Overfitness isn't about the moment. In the moment, overfitness always feels great. That's the trick with overfitness. Underfitness, it always feels a little blurry. And overfitness always feels great in the moment. Because overfitness is like taking the noise and fitting to that, not just the signal. But in the moment, the noise is happening. And so, in a way, whether something is overfit or not is really just about the time horizon that you're considering. If you're overfit, unless you've like just deliberately messed up your model because you want to harm yourself, you're overfit because you are well fit in this moment to what's going on for the past 3 hours, but you're not well fit to what's going to be happening in the future. This is like a super important thing in machine learning, because when you keep training a model, there's this tendency for the model to become overfit. So people in ML think about this a lot. But I think one of the deepest things that goes wrong is people talk about the model being overfit in the abstract, rather than the model being overfit relative to some task or goal or distribution of tasks that we care about. And so one of the things that we've learned with transformers, one of the cool things we've learned that's coming is this idea of double descent. I should have put a graph in for this, but we're just going to talk about it instead. Double descent is the fact that if you have a big enough model and you keep training it against this data, first it's underfit, then it gets well fit to the training data you have, but it's overfit to the outside distribution sample, right? Like if you tried to run against the outer sample, it would be bad. But if you keep going, the model has lots of extra weights and nothing to do with it. So it keeps overfitting. It keeps re-overfitting to new random subsamples. It keeps developing all these different, slightly different, all overfit submodels. And then because there's sort of this intrinsic complexity, if you have any complexity or regularization pressure at all, really, eventually it starts to notice, and it does switching between the models, and it starts to notice, wait a second, this part of this thing that runs here and this part of this thing that runs there, actually, it would be more parsimonious if they were like, I could use fewer weights if they were both the same weight. And so since there's shared substructure between all these models, what happens is that shared substructure all co-activates because it's all about, to some degree, it's the same model, the same situation, but overfit. And because it co-activates, it wants to shrink, right? That's what regularization pressures do, is they want to make your model shrink. And it pulls all of that substructure together. And that's eventually grokking. It groks. It pulls all the substructure together and unifies it into this beautiful, smaller thing, which frees up a bunch of weights for it to keep going. And that's why transformers are so good, because you can just throw tons of data into them and all this stuff. It will learn effectively the generative model of the thing you did to produce all the samples. That's what the second descent is. First, it learns to fit the training samples and it overfits that, but then it learns the generative process that's creating those samples, which is why all LLMs and all transformers are still grossly overfit, because they are well fit to a set of samples from some point in time of the universe, and they're a model of the thing producing, the text over this region of time, and then the world keeps changing, and new text happens, and new things change, and new programming languages come out, and the way we use programming languages change, and the distribution of words we use changes, and it's fit to the noise in that era, not just the signal. It's fit to the noise in our behavior. And so it's overfit, but in this deeper way. It turns out you can just retrain the new model. It's a really good trick, because if you just do that every 6 months, the world doesn't change that fast. So sure, it's overfit, but we'll just make a new one in 6 months. But this is by the way, why models get worse over time. Anyway, so what's going on here is free energy minimization. You can always regard one of these things as minimizing its free energy. All learning processes are free energy minimizers. The energy is just the loss function at some level. You then have to make a bunch of make-believe beliefs about what energy is so that you have a conserved quantity. But you can always do that. It's always possible to see it that way, even if that's not the mechanics. You might have a really weird energy, but it's there. And what we know is that if you're doing inference, and it's to the degree that you're free energy minimizing, one way to see this overfitness thing is it's a trade-off between the accuracy, right, this divergence, minimizing the divergence, and the evidence, which is how complicated am I? I have these priors for what I think is going to happen, my own distribution. How complicated is that distribution? Because the more complicated it is, the more it's going to fit to the noise, and the less it's going to fit to the general principles that cross different times. And so you have this trade-off between these things. And in the modern world, we've figured out, man, optimization is great. Optimization is awesome. And so when we make machine learning models, we penalize complexity, but mostly, and if we look at our lives, we just optimize shit. And we rely on our own sort of sense of things being too complicated, too overwhelming to regulate that. But generally speaking, when you're running a business, you don't quantify the complexity cost of adding an additional Slack channel. You quantify the P&L impact of adding a Slack channel. So we numerically, deliberately climb these gradients as companies, as economies, as people. This is a new thing. This is scientific management. This is the modern world. Effectively, modernity is systematicity about accuracy. Now this is universal. People always cared about accuracy. They always care about this is intuitively, it's how all humans make decisions. It's how all learning systems work. This isn't a new thing in modernity. The new thing is the systematicity. The new thing is we have a model of what we're doing, we make spreadsheets and matrices, and we do organization optimization and like bottleneck detection, and we like systematically drive the thing to match the expected distribution. That's what the GDP is. The GDP, kind of a accuracy function over the whole economy. How accurately is the economy matching our desires? And it's like, I guess it's the inverse. It's the inverse of the divergence, right? Like as the GDP goes up, what that means is there's some underlying desire distribution, some underlying demand distribution, and we're getting better at fitting more of it. That's great. That's great. That's systematicity about accuracy is wonderful. But you have to remember when you're doing it, there's this question of like, at what time horizon, right? So like, we're systematic about accuracy, and in the modern world, we're systematic about about accuracy at lots of time horizons. Especially in this sort of post-modernity really gifted you this, but like everyone knows that GDP isn't the only metric. Everyone knows that there's lots of metrics, and so we have a model to make us accurate about our model of that metrics of accuracy. And so it's this whole thing where we keep making the system more and more accurate. And that overall, I would say, is a good thing. I think that more accuracy is good. It is an accurate depiction of people's desires that they do not wish their children to die, and we've gotten much better at delivering on that. Everyone here, I'm sure, can imagine a dozen charts I could put here. I don't need to sing the praises of modernity because modernity is awesome. You don't want to go live in a non-modernity society because your children are going to die and you're going to starve to death and it's going to suck. But we also, I think if you're here, know that there's this downside to modernity, right? There's this big problem that modernity has, which is that while you're going around optimizing, your model, however good it is, however awesome your model is missing stuff. And I actually think that seeing like a state understates the gravity of this problem, because one idea with seeing like a state is just like, they're just bad at forest management. What if we just like knew all the things and we just like got more robots and more AIs, and we just started like, we could have the nice, diverse forest, and we'll just measure everything more accurately. We'll measure the 1,001 things that we care about here. We'll capture exactly. We'll capture all the metas. We'll write it down. That's what kind of what LLMs are, right? It's like they're like a metis photograph. Like, let's take a photograph of a chunk of metis and like freeze it for later use. Good trick, and very valuable, and it will further increase our accuracy. But like, complexity doesn't manifest in the moment. Overfit always feels great while you're doing it. Overfitness doesn't feel like overfitness. Overfitness is fitness. It's well fitness, but not robustly, not in the face of shocks. This is like Taleb talking about anti-fragility, right? That's what he's talking about. Is like, if your system is too complicated, when you get a shock, at some point it's fragile and it's going to break, because all of that accuracy comes at the cost of all of this interconnected structure. And if something shifts and it moves, you're going to put a lot of pressure on that structure and it's going to snap. Loose coupling is low complexity. It's blurry. It's low precision coupling. When you loosen the coupling, you lower the precision of the system, and necessarily the accuracy of the system. The way you get accurate things is rigid, fast, sharp movements that are precise and exact. The way you get robustness is making things soft and flowy and yin and yang. And what active inference tells you, the math tells you, is that you should balance these things exactly 50-50. And there's a bunch of ways to do that. Active inference has this great way of breaking this down for you, but like, this is free energy principle. If you're minimizing your free energy, one way to look at it is complexity and accuracy. I think that's good for sort of what we're talking about here, but you can also look at that as pragmatic value versus information value. And you can also look at that, and I think this is the one that I go to the most often, is expected ambiguity and risk. So you know risk. Risk is the known unknowns, right? You price risk that you buy insurance for. Ambiguity is the unknown unknowns. Ambiguity is the ways in which the world is different, is not the way you thought it was. And what ambiguity is really about, most of all, is the fact the world is very big and it is changing. And even if you were exactly right today, the world's going to shift. Things are going to be different, and in ways that you can't anticipate. There is non-stationarity in the distribution. There is no, models are always wrong, but sometimes useful. There is no correct, accurate model. If you could make a correct, accurate model in a nice periodic world that repeated, it would be a boring world, but it would be this nice periodic world, then what do you mean ambiguity? What do you mean overfit? There's just fit. Like, in a world that's periodic, have you tried being good at your job? Have you tried actually fitting to the distribution? Like, if the world's periodic, that's the right answer because you can. There's a correct model to go build that will give you, this is how to structure the economy. This model is aligned. We did it. We solved it. We arrived. That is not the world we live in. We live in a world of ambiguity. We live in a world where the underlying distribution is non-stationary. And therefore, a model that is perfectly well fit today is necessarily overfit over time. You have to leave slack. And if you don't have slack in the system, you're definitionally overfit. And in modernity, we are fully systematic about accuracy. And we're kind of loosey-goosey about the whole slack thing and the whole complexity thing. We can't measure it. And you make what you measure. The correct trade-off of how much to value complexity versus how much to value accuracy depends on the system in question. And it, in fact, is in some sense, the way the math works out, it's that in any given context, what you're being told to do, what is optimal, is to equally weight divergence from your priors, like changing yourself, and divergence from the universe, like being accurate about your predictions. And so if you move sort of one bit of divergence closer to the universe, you must move less, you must change your distribution less than one bit in order to do that. And if you don't, as you're learning, you're moving your beliefs more than the predictive accuracy you're gaining, you are falling behind. You're paying too much complexity. Because the truth is, the whole point of ambiguity is you don't have a model of it. It's that which you don't have the model of. And so you have one clue about ambiguity. You always have this one clue. You're still here. You're still living. You're still making decisions. So whatever you did in the past, it must have worked. I don't know why it worked, but like this is Chesterton's fence. And so change from that. This is a quantification of Chesterton's fence. Change from tradition. You don't technically need to know why. That's a folksy way of saying it. However many bits you want to diverge from tradition, it better produce more than that number of bits of accuracy. Or if you're going to say, to make our system simpler, we're gonna sacrifice some accuracy, it better move you more bits closer to your average tradition, to your uniform background prior, than it costs you, or you're falling behind. And you're always looking for these things, right? And most living systems go through cycles on this. During the day, you're learning, you're gaining accuracy about what's happening that day. And at night, you sleep and you dream and you do memory consolidation. And that's your brain's driving down the complexity gradient up. Generally speaking, increasing accuracy requires increasing complexity. And generally speaking, decreasing complexity requires decreasing accuracy. And they're hard to do at the same time. And so you usually go through these cycles. The school year and the summer vacation, the business cycle, is the economy going through this? We've dialed the whole business cycle thing to like accuracy, right? Like we used to have 4 to 1, just like you sleep 4 hours awake, 1 hour asleep. The business cycle used to be 4 years awake, 4 years boom, 1 year bust for a long time. Now it's more like 15 years boom. And I would say our economy is looking a little overfit, personally. And what does an overfit economy look like? An overfit economy looks like something where the GDP keeps going up. And every time someone comes to you and they tell you, I don't know, something feels wrong. You're like, no, but all the numbers say it's good. Everywhere we know to measure it says it's up to the right. And it's like, I know, man, but like, I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. Yeah, because they aren't, because the system is rigid and weird. It has too many oscillations. And when we get a shock, it's going to be bad. What's driving this is infotech, right? Why is this happening? Why are we more and more overfit? Because we're more and more connected. As you add connectivity to the network, as you add more bandwidth and information moves around faster, our ability to learn and to move locally, everyone's following the local learning gradient, to move to be maximally accurate goes up, and our collective ability to do it goes up. And this is good. I am not against infotech. I'm an infotech person, right? But like, we're really connected now. Used to be connection was very rare and scarce, and now is totally free. And sparsity is scarce. Rich people have the luxury of like having someone else manage their cell phone for them, right? That's now a luxury when the opposite used to be. Everything's the middle way, right? Like no total sparsity is bad, but like everything being hyperconnected is bad. And you obviously want some kind of balance between. You want to have it be a dynamic balance because the problems keep changing. And so you want to manage it the way we manage GDP, which is like deliberately, like by tuning a global knob a little bit, right? You'd like to have a global knob you could tune that would penalize complexity the way that GDP rewards accuracy. And then when you're doing projections on like, what should we do? You would be balancing the two, and the system would be healthy instead of manic. right? That's what overfitness psychologically is manicness. It's like our economy is manic right now. It's like everything's great. We're gonna do all, yeah. Don't worry, you're taking a lot of credit. Credit's great because everything's gonna be awesome because we're doing it just right. That's what the economy's thinking right now, basically. Manic trips end in one of two ways, like you calm down or the universe calms you down. So what can be done? What would it look like to manage complexity at a systematic level? And I can tell you what it might look like in your personal life. In your personal life, you can feel it. Complexity is your sense of sort of informational overwhelm. And the way you reduce that is stop consuming news sources that are high frequency. If you are going to consume news sources that are high frequency, consume them from people who are not highly connected. Following Trump or Elon or the Kardashians, that is high complexity because it synchronizes you with society and it puts you into a synchronized state, which is overfitting your life. It's very simple, right? But it comes down to like don't overfollow celebrity news and talk to your friends, be local, like things you know you should do anyways. Yeah, but seriously, that's like increasingly important. You should do that. Yeah, we've read mathematically why it's important for you to talk to your friends and not spend all your time on Twitter. That's mathematically proven now. That's true. And that's good, by the way. It's good when a theory predicts homespun wisdom because that means it pays a low complexity cost for adoption. Like if it was predicting you to do wildly different things, then it would be a very complicated theory. But because it's close to our priors, this should give you more confidence the theory is true. But it tells you to do something about us collectively, because it's not enough for us to do this. Is not a problem we can solve as individuals. It's not a problem we made as individuals. A problem we made as a society. And so it's a modest proposal. Information may be forwarded no further than 1.5 miles each minute, which is equivalent to 90 miles an hour. And exceeding that rate requires paying a tax per bit, quadratic, in the speed. And this is an L2 loss over our society's information channels. And that will do what an L2 loss does over any large model, which is it will regularize it and cause it to move towards more stable, more robust, less overfit state. And you get this nice knob you can tune. This is equivalent of interest rates. So you have interest rates on the one hand to tune for accuracy, and then you have the tax rate. How many pennies at the bottom? It doesn't need, by the way, in any way to be a high tax. Like this could be a very, very gentle tax, and you would be shocked at what it changes. Because when suddenly you have global TikTok you could be on, which is better. It does have better TikTok videos, technically. Or you could be on local San Francisco TikTok. And local San Francisco TikTok is 3% worse because, come on, it's all kind of the same. But the global TikTok costs you $1 a day and San Francisco TikTok is free. Suddenly, you might find yourself just, I don't know, why would I want to pay the dollar, right? It's just a lot. It's different. It would provide a new way for wealth to realize inequality. When you make it so that people can get on airplanes, rich people can afford more airplane tickets. And so rich people fly more. So airplanes don't increase inequality. Airplanes give form to inequality. There will be inequality in the usage. But actually, no, this is the opposite. What regularization pressure does is it evens everything out. This will have the tendency, instead of having one big TikTok monopoly that makes one set of founders rich, you'll have a bunch of local TikTok monopolies that make 10 founders rich. It will have in general, across everything, downward pressure. You'll have way fewer billionaires and way more centimillionaires. You'll have way fewer centimillionaires and way more 10 millionaires. It will generally push everything into a flatter, more even distribution. That's the whole point of regularization. The thing causing the inequality is we're really well fit. This person builds a company that drives commerce for half the world, produces very accurately what those people want, and does produce this huge amount of value. The most accurate estimate of its value is very, very, very high. And he owns some percentage of that correctly. And therefore, he is extremely, extremely wealthy. But we're overfit. We're over-rotating on how much value it produced. And we're saying it's good. We're saying it's good as a society to have one system that's global, that's a unified system everywhere, instead of a patchwork of interconnected organic systems. And no, that's not good, actually. We're overpaying you. But we're overpaying you not because you didn't produce global value, but because global value isn't worth as much as local value is. And the only way you fix this is to put a pressure against global value and towards local value. And so this is a modest proposal, but I honestly think, and I don't think you'd actually implement it because I just people will ever go for quadratic taxes. They're correct, but it's just too hard. When we fix this, and I really hope we do, and I think we will, the thing that we do will implicitly produce this. So like, and I'll give an example from machine learning. When you're doing machine learning, one way to do it is variational or just distributional machine learning, where you don't just keep track of what the weight is, you keep track of a belief around what your precision is on that weight, like how much you think that weight varies. And this lets you do better machine learning at the cost of more compute, because when you change the weight, if it's high precision, you change it less. And if it's low precision, you change it more. It's a complexity penalty on the weight. And so you can go do this with things like Kalman filters or whatever, where you literally do this. You literally have you keep track of a variance per weight, but like you can also just clip the gradients. And clipping the gradients statistically, and you average it over all of the weights, is identical to keeping track of the precisions. Because instead of keeping track of it at a individual weight level, what each thing is, you keep track of a clipping threshold, and you move that up and down globally. And like, yeah, it's not right for any of the individual weights exactly, but like on average, it's about right. And so you give the whole field a shared precision effectively with gradient clipping. And gradient clipping is way cheaper. Gradient clipping is very common. It's a really important technique. Variational distributional RL barely gets used. This is like the distributional variational RL suggestion. It's way too complicated. You could never actually implement it. It's actually kind of silly. But we have to find a way to approximate this somehow. I don't have the answer for this, but like we need the equivalent of gradient clipping for this. We need to do something that, on average-ish pushes us in this direction. Let me just go through the Trump administration's objectives real quick, because our system has just decided somehow that this administration with these policies are the ones that it wants. And so I've started to see all these systems as like there are individual decisions and individual people, but you can also see it as the system making a decision, the system learning. Tariffs. What are tariffs but gradient clipping on trade? Immigration. What is immigration? But immigration, like blocking immigration, but gradient clipping on people moving, that information moving around. Everything the Trump administration is about is this thing I actually find personally a little bit distasteful. It's like kind of this like almost xenophobic, like separate, cut across. But that's because that's what we need. I don't love the way it's being implemented, but like we've got to start gradient clipping the system. And the problem with the tariffs thing is it puts the whole thing inside, and it should be smaller. So we must reduce the ambiguity, or nature's going to reduce it for us. We're all done now.